Welcome to Alter Everything, a podcast about data science and analytics culture. I'm Megan Bowers, and today I'm talking with Alex Patrushev, head of product at Nebius. In this episode, we chat about how organizations face gaps between data and business impact, strategies for bridging these gaps, and how AI fits into these challenges. Let's get started. Welcome to the show, Alex. It's great to have you on here. Could you give a quick introduction to yourself for our listeners?
Yeah, I'm Megan. Thank you for having me. First of all, my name is Alexander. You can call me Alex. So I'm kind of person who's always looking for new challenges. I love sport, especially mountain bike. I really love to go through the forest and hills. Yeah, and from professional perspective. So right now I'm working as a head of the product in the Nebius, one of the rising neoclouds.
Gotcha. So can you tell us a little bit more about what Nebius does and just dive a little more into your role there?
Our main mission is to make AI accessible to anyone, regardless the level of expertise and the use case. So ideally, we want to build a platform where any person could build chatbot, train his own huge model, new state-of-the-art language model, or just fine-tune something, or maybe just build his personal task planner for the day. We want to build that, and for that, we're building multiple products. What I really love in Nebius is that we control everything. We're building everything by ourselves, literally. So we're building the data centers, we're building the servers, the storage, we're building the software, we're writing software, and all of that is a cloud where it's on demand with a self-service. So this is like what we're trying to build, and I think it's already available to a lot of people.
Awesome. Is that challenging? I mean, building everything from the ground up, like when it comes to data centers, seem like such a different thing than the actual software. How do you guys manage all of that?
It's not a simple thing. Honestly, I personally don't really know a lot. Maybe I know more than average people, but as we have multiple things in Nebius, including data centers and the servers, we actually have a team who's responsible for that. And they are doing that for many years, like more than 20 years. So they know exactly what to do, how to do, and what is also important, they're not just doing that every time the same way. They're continuously looking for new innovation. Like, for example, data center in Finland doesn't use coolers. It's just because it's in a specific location where you have a lot of cool air all over the year. You actually could just cool with the air. And in the winter, you actually need to heat up the air before you put it in the data center. There is a lot of waste of the heat. So in Finland, that heat is actually going to recirculate through the special system to the next village. And there are several thousands of people heated by data center during the winter.
Wow, that's super cool. Really interesting use of that power.
If you know what to do, that's not hard. But if you don't know how to do, that's hard. But in Nebius, we know how to do that.
Going back to AI and data, I'd love to hear about how you see organizations facing a gap between their data and business impact.
Yeah, that's super important question. So what I can see right now, first of all, the data is super important thing. You cannot do anything without the data. And you need not just data, you need really high quality data because like in back in the days in the data science, we have that rule in AI as well. Garbage in, garbage out. So that means you could not do anything really high quality if you haven't worked on the data. So the data is super important, but in the same time, the business impact is another important thing. If you build something, but that something doesn't solve specific problem of the business, doesn't help business, then no one will use it. So you always need to balance between what you could build easily, for example, with with existing data, and what's super important for a business. So in the end of the day, it means that sometimes you need to stop, you need to look around, maybe collect something new, maybe buy some new data, but you always need to start from the business requirements. So there is definitely a gap, and there are a lot of ways how you can close that gap.
What are some of the things that contribute to that gap? I think there's this information side and also infrastructure side. So, on the information side, could you talk a little bit more about like data drift or things that cause companies to face challenges with their data?
So about the data as information, I think that there are three most important. Um, the first one will be availability of the data, and here it's about like, do you have a data today? Maybe you don't have it today, so maybe you need to start to collect that. Maybe you can just buy some data that you're missing, or there is also a new way to generate the data. To build a big model, you need a lot of data to fine tune model. But if you don't have it, one of the things Meta was releasing in open source, I really like that they call it synthetic data kit. So it's a special framework, Python library, which you can use to, you can provide, let's say, some data that you have. And then you can clarify, you can describe what do you want to get. Like, for example, you want to get data set with a question and answers to train the chatbot, support bot. And this library will actually use big models under the hood to build you a new data set. So it will be synthetic data set based on the real data, and you will use it. So that's the first thing. You can collect, you can buy, or you can just generate data. Then what also important about the availability. So if we think about like big company, enterprise who have multiple teams, like 10 teams doing different projects, and especially if it's more regulated like FSI, like banking or healthcare. So it's not only about number of teams, it's also about the regulation of data access. So for them, it's super important not just to collect the data. For them, it's actually really important to build a data catalog. So if you have like several teams and you have some regulations, it actually means that you need to write a data catalog, because that will be a place where all the team could exchange the data. For example, someone already processed credit cards or cleaned the personal data. So they can just publish it in a data catalog and other teams could just use it. So data catalog is also super important if we have more than one team. And do not forget that you need to version your data. For any reason, you will need to go back to check where is the problem is coming from of the model. You won't be able to do that because you just recreate your data, you just rewrite your data. So versioning is super important, and I believe it's super easy. There are a lot of nice tools like DVC have data version control. There are open source tooling that if you want, you can just go and use any object storage like AWS S3, Nebius S3, Nebius object storage, or like Google GCP they have, and you can enable versioning of the data. It doesn't cost a lot, but it gives you like a way to go back and check where is the problem. So that was about the first, the availability. Then there is a second thing, which is a quality. So the quality is data is really important. We mentioned at the beginning. It's about like cleaning the data, removing noisy data, but it's also about the thing that you mentioned that about data drift, that we're living in a continuously changing world around us, which means in a couple of months, you might have different population of your service, of your users. You might have different patterns or just new data is coming from. And you need to do monitoring of the data. I couldn't say that a lot of people are doing that. So you need to detect things like data drift, conceptual drift. So they will help you to achieve several things. So first of all, your quality will not goes down. That's important. So your users will be still enjoying the good service. And the second, what is also super important, if we are talking about fine tuning or building your own models, it costs money. You need GPUs to do that. It's not a question that you need to retrain the model. It's like back in the days for any other models, you were doing the same. But now it's cost a lot because you need a lot of GPUs. If you'll do that just because you think so, like I think that we need to do it monthly, or maybe you need to do that weekly. So you will actually burn money. Like it's lucky if if the quality will not drop, then you will just burn money. But if it's also the quality dropping and and you don't see that, you'll also affect your users. So it will become the money problem and the user satisfaction churn problem. So for that, you need to continuously monitor the data and retrain when you actually need it. And if you do that in this way, that will make sure your users are not churning, so they are happy with you. And the second, you actually do retraining only when you need it. And maybe you need to do that just once a year. So you will save a lot of money if you will not do that like every month just because you think so. And again, it's a repeatable process. So the monitoring should be done continuously. It's up to you to see when, how often you need to do that, like every day, every month, every week. I think that you can start with a more often and then slowly reduce it. Like you start with a weekly data drift detection. You do that for 3 months. So then switch to 2 months. It's just because again, you will save some money. You don't need to do that continuously. And probably the last important thing is to make sure that your data is diversified. So in nowadays, we see that multi-modality models are stronger. They're really good in terms of you can collaborate, you can interact with them directly for the images, for the text and images. Now there is also voice images. Soon we will see really strong video models. So modality is also important.
That makes a lot of sense. I think some really good points there. And then if we look at it from the infrastructure side, the physical side, where do you see organizations facing challenges?
So it's the first question, where do you store it? Because let's say if you have a structured data like orders, history of orders, you need database. If you have images, for example, of the items that you have in the store, then you need somewhere to keep millions of images from different angles. You have again, if you look on a store use case, you also have a description of the item, like all parameters. So you need something like document DB in this case. So you have different types of the data, and there is no one tool for everything. So you need to have multiple tools. You need like object storage, you need document DB, you need SQL database, maybe you need something else. And you need to make a meta catalog from all of that, not to search continuously. So you also need a catalog with the metadata of all of that. So that's the first thing. And again, we discussed that you need to do data drift detection and you need to do it continuously, which means you need also orchestrator. You need some place where you execute your scripts to process data, analyze the data. For example, you will do that with a Spark or with a Pandas or something else that you prefer to use, but you need an infrastructure for that. And this is from the software part. But under the hood, it also means that you need hardware infrastructure for that. And it means that you need servers, you need storage, you need connection between them, you need networking, load balancing, and absolutely different things. And I think here's a question like, how do people want to solve that? So all things that I just mentioned, and honestly, most of the things that are happening in the current AI space, like with the language models, with the Gen AI, it's not big difference from what we have like 10 years ago with a random cut forest model. Scale is different, yes. So scale is much higher now, but the principles are the same, more or less. So people can always go and build something by themselves. That's absolutely fine. There are a lot of nice open source tools. In the same time, I believe if company wants to be really effective, especially if we're talking about digital natives, if we're talking about startups, I know that feeling when you, like an engineer, you build something from scratch. You took like virtual machines and you build everything. It's cool from an engineering perspective.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're like a Lego store. But does business need it? I mean, is your online shop, travel agency benefit from the fact that what is Linux and you were able to deploy, I don't know, object storage based on the 5 virtual machines? Like, no.
Right. They're just like, how long is it going to take?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so that's why I think that a lot of companies who are building AI nowadays, they could benefit from cloud providers, and different cloud platforms. This is the reason why in Nebius we decided that we don't want to build just a simple place where you can get virtual machine. So we decided that we want to build a full stack. So we have virtual machines, we have different storages like databases, we have object storage, file storage, network disk storage. We built the software stack for all of that. So if you want, you can go and track experiments with MLflow. If you want, you can process data with a Spark. Maybe you can just run data processing on a Slurm. Funny enough, but it becomes really popular nowadays to use Slurm for data processing with a Pandas script. But that tool and many other different tools with the same idea, you need a big model to run an inference. So that means, again, you need a GPU to run it, or you need some API where you can get a model. So that's why in Nebius, we also built the layer where you can get models. We call it AI Studio, where you can get models through the API, like 405 billion models, Llama, 70 billion models, Llama, Mistral, and other different models. So that's why we build all of that. And it's not, honestly, it's not really easy to build that. For example, if we're talking about training, you have like thousands of GPUs taking the data, the same data to train a model. So we're talking about like thousands of gigabytes per second of moving data. It's a huge storage, and then it's a huge performance that you need to provide. And you might have multiple such clients. And at the same time, while someone is doing that, someone is just generating images and putting them on object storage. So that's why it's not really easy. But yeah, but we know how to do that. But probably you want to stay more focused on data, AI, and the connection between data and the business impact.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It is super interesting, and I think that listeners can relate to some of the challenges that you've mentioned, especially I feel like around the availability. I know I really could have used a data catalog at my last job, tried to sort through all the data there. So you mentioned some good examples of ways to help solve this challenge, but could you give any more on like how organizations can go about bridging this gap between their data and their business impact?
I think that there are five really important, let's say, components, pillars that you need to always think about. So, first of all, you need to select a project. So, where it's probably where you need to start. Like, I know that it's really cool to build one more chatbot. It's super easy, honestly. Like, there are millions of frameworks, samples on the GitHub and the website, but will your business actually make anything important from it? If do you actually have a place to put a chatbot? Maybe you have like offline store, like normal grocery store. Why you want to build a chatbot? So the project selection will be the first thing, and I really recommend to do a really simple exercise. So think about three dimensions: data, availability of the data, the second, the business impact. And the third is how easy you can find the solution. Is it problem already solved or not? And then for all of them, for all your projects, for all your ideas, put a number from 1 to 9 to each dimension. Do you have a data or you don't have a data? And then what's impact on the business it will be? Like, is it like really impactful on the business or just doing nothing? And then just can you find the solution, like 5 solutions, potential solutions that you might reuse. And you will end up with a really small table, depends on how much ideas you have, actually. And you need to select the project where you have the really good balance between all of them. You might have a really good project in terms of total number. Like, for example, you have a 9 for a data. So you definitely have a data, super good data, but zero, like 1 impact for a business. Do you need to do that? No. Probably you will do that, but business will just ask you, like, why you're wasting my time and resources. On the other hand, you might have a really good project, super for the business, but you don't have a data at all. Or maybe this is like a super difficult project where which no one solved right now. You could not find anything like no algorithms, no frameworks, no blogs. So do you want to start with this project? Maybe also no, just because you will spend a lot of time. And as a result, what I suggest, take some project where you have median for everything. Ideally 9 for everything, but it's probably it doesn't exist.
Or it's already been solved.
Yeah, in this case, you will get something like where you have a data, so you can actually do that. It's impactful for the business, so you'll get support, you will get resources, and there are some solutions. So you don't need to do everything from the beginning. You mostly just need to like take a look what people achieved and try to use their solutions. Maybe one of them will actually solve your problem with a nice quality that you're looking for. So that's first, I think. Then it's about stakeholder communication. I really believe it's important. And when I say stakeholder, it doesn't mean that the vice president of the company needs to continuously talk about AI in internal communication. It's more about that when you do a project, you need to take people into the team who knows something about it. Because like data scientist, I saw a lot of memes about the data scientist doing project without any understanding what this data means. So that might become a problem, honestly. So you need to collaborate with the stakeholders, with the people whose business rely on it, whose KPIs rely on it, with the people who understand what's the data. That will help you to create a next important thing, skilled and collaborative team. So you need a team, cross-functional probably, who will help you to collaborate with people around the team. And you also need to have a skills in the team. So it's fine if you don't have a skills. I really believe most of the hard skills could be learned. It's just a question of motivation and available resources. So if you're missing some skills, you can find a person on a contract or permanent. If you want, you can teach your current team. Then another important thing is data, that all the things that we just discussed about availability, quality, and diversity. And the last really important thing, I think, I believe, it's a tech stack. So it's again that what we have discussed. Like nowadays, there are millions of tools, millions of things around you, from open source till commercial platforms. You need to select something that, first of all, don't select something absolutely new, because you will spend a lot of time learning it, and you will have a lot of fails just because you're doing that for the first time. And the second, do not build everything by yourself, because in the end of the day, your business, I know, selling tickets, selling cucumbers, or something else like generating images. So do not waste time on getting virtual machines or physical servers, repair them, maintain them, deploy the entire stack and support that stack. Maybe you can just take something more or less managed and just quickly go and run. Then, when your business will be strong, when that use case will be widely used inside of the company or outside of the company, you can think about optimization. And this is a moment where you can start to think about, okay, maybe I don't need managed Spark. Maybe I could run my own Spark on the physical server or in a virtual machine, and it will be cheaper. So I think those are five most important things, like project selection, communication, team, data, and tech stack. So those things, if the people will think about all of them, that will actually help to really close the gap between the data and the business.
Definitely. Those are really good guidelines. I really like that, the way you laid that out. I'm curious, though, what you think about, there's a really big push to implement AI, get AI projects going. Maybe like top levels of your company is pushing AI this, AI that. Do you think that there's like any risks around widening this gap between the data and the impact with kind of the rush and the popularity of AI projects just for AI projects' sake?
Great question. I believe that if people will just put AI everywhere, that will make problems. Not mean everything will goes bad and something happen. No, it just means that it might become super inefficient. I really believe that people are supposed to use the simplest solution. So if there is something that you can solve without implementing AI, why not to use? In the end of the day, artificial intelligence is not a deep learning, is not LLM. Artificial intelligence is a bigger, all those LLMs, deep learning, it's inside of artificial intelligence. Like 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago. I remember I had I think it was HTC with a Windows Mobile, and there was a program to navigate me through the city. That time, there was no PyTorch, there was no LLM. It was actually just a simple road optimization algorithm. That's it. But it was artificial intelligence. Yes, it was. So implementing AI doesn't mean that you need to burn thousands of GPUs and use the biggest model in the world. I believe AI could help a lot everywhere. Like, for example, even with the data, AI could help. So imagine data catalog, and you just mentioned that you were spending a lot of time just searching the data for it. Why not to use AI to annotate the data? Make a really nice notation for each column of the data, and it will make data catalog bright. Everyone will start to use it because it's super easy to search for it. AI could help here, yes. But what I want to avoid people from doing is to put the most state of the art model everywhere. It's just non efficient.
I feel like a good place to end would be to just hear a little bit about how your company's implementing AI and what you've learned along the way from that.
Yeah, that's good. So we're building the cloud and the platform with the GPUs, MLOps, and AI through the API. Well, we have our own AI team, and they're doing a lot of the research. Like One of the latest things that they open sourced was flash attention implementation in the JUX. Before that, they open sourced the dataset which they used to train the agent code assistant, which achieved 30% of on SVE bench. That time it was like state of the art for non-commercial models, for open source models. So they open sourced that data set. It's on a Hugging Face. They create a lot of articles around how they train it, how they clean the data. They also, like back in the days, they were training 300 billions mixture of expert model. And right now we implemented a lot of the chatbots. So we have a chatbot for the support. So our support is fully automated with the chatbot. It's really convenient for the users. We have internal HR bot. We have internal solution architect bot, which can have access to the data, to the Confluence and many other different places. And you can just ask the question like, what the speed of the network, how to configure something, and it'll just give you an answer based on documentation, Confluence, some Slack channels. So it's super convenient. But while we're doing all of that, so while we were training our own 300 billion models, while we are training all those software agents, prepare data, and doing internal chatbots, why we're doing that? Because we learn from that. And this is super important for us because, as I said, our main business is to build a cloud for AI. And here is a good question, like how you can build a cloud for AI, specifically specialized on AI, if you have no idea what is AI and how to build an AI project.
Right.
So the insights that we're getting from this team available. So they help us to burn GPUs. They help us to optimize networking. They help us to optimize hypervisor. They help us to optimize storage, different patterns. So we see a lot of insights. And what is super important, it's not just insights that you see that, it's actually you can go and ask why this is happening. And they give you, okay, so this is what's happening. This is how infrastructure is set up. This is how environment is set up. And you can find a lot of things. For example, storage. Some storage might have a cache. You read ahead. And for example, if you're reading small blocks, but you have a big cache for read ahead, you're actually reading a lot. Your storage start to underperform just because you have a lot of reads, while those reads are not necessary. It's just because the system, that's configuration of the system. So you can actually find all the things if you have access. And that team, they're giving all of that. And it's the same for all those chatbots, internal chatbots. While we're building them, we learn which database what the best database. And we can build a database as a managed service for our clients. What does it mean to build a RAG, for example? What are parameters? What are important parameters? And we can actually build, with that kind of knowledge, we can build RAG as a service because we know which parameters should be optimized, which should be configurable by the user, which should be hidden from the user, because we still want to build managed solution. So in our organization, we're doing a lot of things. We're doing research, training, dataset creation, open sourcing, all of that, and we are doing internal tools. And all of that help us to be efficient and give us a lot of insights about how to build a cloud for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can see how going through all of those efforts can help you basically build your product even better because you're using it and you're using AI and figure out the pain points and things like that. So very cool. And thanks so much for joining us on the show today. It's been super interesting and it's great to have you.
Thank you so much. It was amazing to chat with you.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about Alex and Nebius, head over to our show notes on alteryx.com/podcast. And if you like this episode, leave us a review. See you next time.